Can't decide on burgers or brats? Make both. Today we're going to be making bacon cheeseburger brats. We're going to be using an all beef meat block as well as some really cool inclusions. To boost up our flavor, we're going to be adding rendered bacon, diced onion, and of course cheese. Now let's back up a little bit and I'll show you how I made this unique sausage. For my first step, I'm going to get my bacon rendered. I'm going to take about 4 pounds of bacon here, chop it up, and get it over some medium heat, hoping to render out all that fat so I'm left with some nice, crispy bacon pieces. This part of it takes a while, and I'm going to want to make sure I cool it down before adding it as an inclusion into my sausage, so it's going to be my first step. I'm going to cut this into about 1-inch cubes. Doesn't have to be perfect, because again, this is going to render down and be little, basically bacon crumbles by the time it's done. But this is going to add a ton of flavor. It's going to add a little bit of texture as well into our final product. And now that this is all chopped up, we're going to set the pot over medium, maybe medium-low, to get this bacon nice and rendered. And while my bacon is rendering, I'm going to start cutting up our beef. And I'm going to cut this into grinder-size pieces, so about 2.5 to 3-inch cubes. I'm using beef chuck roasts for my sausage. You can see there's a good amount of fat in here, and that'll help with texture and flavor, of course, and it'll help us get a good bind on our final product. So I'm just going to start breaking this down into more manageable pieces for the grinder. And then, as always, we're going to set this in the freezer. The reason we're doing that is to chill the meat and chill the fat so the fat doesn't start to melt and smear through the grinding process or even through the mixing process. Into the freezer we go, and we'll be ready to grind in about 30 to 45 minutes once we get a nice chill on our meat and it starts to firm up. Our bacon is really nice and rendered, so now we're going to strain off the fat. And are we going to throw this fat away? Of course not, because we're resourceful. So we're going to save that and we'll use it to fry up our eggs. We can mix it 50-50 with room temperature butter and then remold it and have bacon butter, which if you haven't tried that, it's life-changing. So again, before this goes into our meat block, we want to make sure that our bacon is fully cooled because we don't want to heat up our meat at all. Again, everything we do in the whole grinding process, mixing process, is efforts to keep the meat block cold, to avoid the smearing, to avoid fat out. So we're going to cool this down as much as possible before adding it and mixing it in. After 45 minutes in the freezer, we've got some hardening on the outside, which is just what we want. This is going to grind up really nice. We should have some really nice particle separation still without any smearing. So I'm going to get the grinder set up, and we're going to do a classic 2-stage grind, starting with a 3/8 inch plate and finishing with a 3/16. The batch size we ended up with is almost exactly 10 pounds. That is by design so that all of our math for breaking down our seasoning and adding our inclusions will be nice and easy for us. For our bacon cheeseburger beef brat, we're going to be using our number 680 bacon cheeseburger blend. When you purchase this seasoning, it's designed for a 25-pound batch. So we need to break this down for an appropriate amount of seasoning for our batch size. We have 10 pounds, and 10 pounds is 40% of 25. So we need 40% of our seasoning mix weighed out. And that is going to come to about 200 grams. So we're going to go ahead and add this right in. Gentle as we add it in, because those seasonings, if you shake them up too much, they'll get in the air and make you cough a little bit. Now we're going to start weighing out our other inclusions. For our bacon, I want about a 10% inclusion. So our batch size is 10 pounds. So I want 1 pound of bacon. Now I also chopped some red onion, and I pre-weighed this for a 2.5% inclusion. Onion is going to be a very strong flavor, and we don't want it overpowering our other flavors that we have in there, so we're going to use a smaller amount of that. That is pre-weighed. We're going to start mixing in just a moment here, and then our last inclusion after these go in is going to be high temp cheddar cheese. I want to mix that in last because as the cheese gets mixed throughout and that pressure gets put on as we mix, the cheese has a tendency to break down a little bit, so I want to mix that just until it's barely incorporated and not over mix it into the meat block. Lastly, we're going to be adding some ketchup. That'll give us the classic burger flavor that we like as a topping, and it'll give it a little bit of moisture and some acidity to our final product. I don't want the flavor of the ketchup to overpower anything. I want it to be a nice additive. So I'm going to be using it at a lower inclusion rate, just like the red onion. I'm going to go for 2.5% on this as well, which means I need 4 ounces of ketchup. Or 1/4 pound. Boom, look at that. So we're ready to start mixing. And to help our seasoning distribute and add a little moisture to our bratwurst, we're of course going to add a little bit of water as well. I like doing about 1 ounce per pound of meat, so I'm going to be adding about 10 ounces of water. So this blend, our 680 Bacon Cheeseburger blend, is going to have a great level of salt and spices and a good amount of bacon flavor. That bacon flavor is going to double up with the inclusion that we're already adding. And then, adding our high temp cheese is going to give us the bacon cheeseburger. Now, we got a basic mix in, so I'm going to go ahead and add in our inclusions. Bacon, onion, now what we're looking for here is the same as any pork sausage, any mixed meat block that we've done before. We're looking for protein extraction. And that is where the proteins and the fats start to bind. That's going to help with bite. It's going to help avoid the fat melting out during the cooking process. It's going to keep that flavor intact and in our sausage. You can tell the protein extraction by how well it sticks to your hand. So standard inclusion rate that I go by with cheese is 10%, but this is a bacon cheeseburger, right? So we're going to add an extra 2.5%. We're going to go up to 1.25 pounds. Extra cheesy, extra delicious. In it goes. And we'll do our final mix. Now one thing you'll notice if you do end up making this recipe is a pure beef brat is going to be a lot more dense. So it's a little harder to mix. So hopefully you've been working out. So I have our stuffer set up with a 3/4 or 7/8 inch horn, whichever works for you. And now I'm going to start loading in our meat block. And as usual, I'm going to take a little bit, put it in the center of the hopper, and push down in the middle, and that will help us avoid air bubbles or pockets in our sausage. For our brats, I'm going to be using a 32 to 35 millimeter Natural Hog Casing. It's one of my favorite casings to use because it's a very approachable size for both a bun or any other application. I gave our casings a good rinse, and I let them sit in lukewarm water for about 45 minutes before. That'll help hydrate them a little bit and get them nice and pliable to go onto the horn and to start stuffing. So now I'm just going to find the end here and start dunking it in the water. And that'll pull some water through the casing, giving it a final rinse, lubricating the casing to easily go onto our horn, like so. Just thread that all the way on, and then we'll start cranking. And there we go. Put some water down on the counter, and we're ready to crank. So I'm going to use just a little bit of pressure with my left hand here, with my fingers on the horn. I'm going to pinch the end of the casing as it starts to come out the horn. And nice and slow, we will start stuffing our bratwurst. These look really nice. You can see the cheese inclusion in there. Now we're gonna link up our sausages. Pretty standard. We're gonna go for the 7 or 8 inch length. We're gonna be very gentle when we pinch. The meat block is very dense, so I'm a little worried about bursting. So we're gonna go nice and slow as we link up our brats. And as we go through, I'm also going to be eliminating the air pockets with my trusty sausage pricker so that we won't have any bursting due to high heat either. With this batch, I am going to do what I normally don't have patience for. I'm going to set them in the fridge and let them rest overnight before trying them tomorrow. The point of this is to allow the flavors to meld a little bit and dry out the casings so we'll have a much better experience tomorrow. It's been about 24 hours since we finished casing our sausage yesterday, and they look amazing. They smell even better, so I'm really excited to try these. I'm gonna go ahead and unlink these, vac pack the majority of them so I can throw them in the freezer or the fridge to hold them for later, but I'm also gonna grill a few up. Got some cool toppings, and we'll be ready to try them. I grilled up our brats to an internal temperature of 155 degrees, and I threw some on some buns, and these are pretty much limitless in terms of what toppings you want. Anything that you would put on a burger. Barbecue sauce, caramelized onions, mustard, ketchup, pickles, fried onions, whatever you want. I went a little bit classic so we can get more of the flavor of the sausage itself. So we're just going with some pickles and mustard. But the first thing I need to taste is the sausage by itself. So we're gonna cut into one here, and that looks pretty good. You can see all the bacon, cheese, and onions in there, nice and juicy. All right, let's try it. I mean, it tastes like a bacon cheeseburger, so that's what we were going for. The salt level is perfect. I think the extra inclusion of bacon really took this over the top. There's a little bit of sweetness from the red onion, and just a hint of acid from the ketchup, which is really cool. Texture is great. The cheese makes it nice and creamy, and overall, this is a really good brat. It's a really good burger, just shaped differently too. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Now, if you're looking to try something different in your sausage making, I highly recommend this. It's different than pork, so it's got a completely different flavor profile, and it's also a huge talking point at your next backyard barbecue. Overall, a successful sausage. I don't often make beef brats, but this was a great application and something a little different. If you'd like this recipe, you can head to psseasoning.com for the details, as well as all the products I used. If you like this video, please click subscribe. And as always, you can check us out on all forms of social media. Until next time, I'm Chef Jed. Thanks for watching.